All right. Well, hello, everybody. I am Nicole Victor. I'm the Director of Enrollment at the Children's School. TCS is a early learning, so we start at the age of 3. We go through 8th grade, a school that has been around since 1970. We are actually celebrating our 50th year this year, which is super, super exciting at the school. We've long since been a school that has really been committed to children and childhood, thinking about what is developmentally appropriate for children as they progress through their stages and ages. A few years ago, we decided to expand the school and added 7th and 8th grade over the last couple of years, which really has been one of the most wonderful pieces at TCS in the last few years in terms of things that have evolved at the school. We also have a new head of school. Her name is Rosalind Benjamin. She started on July 1st officially, but we laughingly and jokingly say that she has been in the background certainly over the last 5 to 6 months, particularly as COVID really came on hand for the school and as we had some big decisions to make. But she started officially here on July 1 after really an extensive national and international search that was conducted. And she has already proven to be quite a powerhouse here at TCS. You can see her in the morning at Carpool. You'll see her walking around doing recess. She has committed to knowing every child's name here by the time December comes around, and she is well on her way. And she knows not only our in-person kids, but she very much knows our remote learners as well, which I'll be happy to share more about, about that piece. With TCS, we have been long since a school that not only just thinks about children and childhood, but really thinks about how children and adults show up as their most authentic selves here at the school. We are a school that's been proudly diverse for our entire history, really thinking about diversity in its fullest extent, not just in terms of diversity that you can see, but the diversity that you really cannot see. Oftentimes families will ask me, what is a typical family or a typical child here at TCS? And that is a very hard question to answer because we are such a diverse community environment. I will say that our families, our parents, our guardians that are here really do understand the mission of the school. We have a very simple mission, which is to enrich minds and to inspire dreams. But how that plays out here at the school, it shows up in a lot of different ways. We want children to love learning, to be curious, to ask questions. From a very early age, we teach our children how to ask questions, to get to the next question, to get to multiple answers or to the answer. We want our kids to love what they do. So we lead with play in everything that we do. And that's not just for our young children, but that really, that spirit of play, that understanding around play goes really all the way up through 8th grade. And even for the adults, we, when we're interviewing for positions, we will ask people who have applied, how do you play? What does play look like in your own life? Because we find that when people really understand the joy and tapping into that inner childhood, that they will then understand why play is such an important factor here at TCS and really beyond. That children and adults, that we learn from trial and error, from learning by doing, from getting messy. That process of iteration is super important. And so we embed all of those concepts really throughout the day, throughout the year, and throughout the years here at the school. I will actually stop there. What I did was I brought we've been putting together a number of 360 videos here. We wanted to, knowing that this is certainly an unusual year, a year where families are going to be looking for lots of different ways to learn about schools, to learn about TCS, and knowing that this year is a year where we're limiting access to campus, we still wanted to be able to provide families with the opportunity to be able to get a sense of what life is like on campus. And it is worth sharing that we will offer a few select Saturdays when families can come visit and do an individual tour. And I will send all of that information actually to Pia and to Lindell so that they know all of those different pieces and how families connect. But I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. I'm still working out the Zoom kinks, if you will, but I wanted to just basically share what a classroom looks like, what it feels like. We took actually what we call a 360 video of not only of our campus, but we did one of our kindergarten classroom. And I think that our kindergarten classrooms are very much representative of how we feel learning should, what learning should look like. So bear with me. All right. Here we go. So I'm just going to restart this. All right, so I'm hoping that everybody can see this. We have, one of the things that we were able to do was when the CDC came out with the recommendations about numbers of students in a space, what that should look like, we were able to really take our classrooms and be able to break our kids down into pods. So in kindergarten, you will have between 10 and 12 children in a pod. We have an 11-to-1 student to teacher ratio on average starting in kindergarten going through 5th grade. When children enter into our middle grades, which is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade here, you'll find that the student to teacher ratio grows because they are certainly more independent at that point to be 15-to-1. So what you are starting to see is a classroom that, that has been certainly reconfigured, if you will, but also in terms of in keeping with the CDC guidelines. So for example, you'll see that we have these barriers so that children can still see each other, but still be safe in the space, if you will. We do have our students masked. So you'll see in this video, you see this is actually Kelly. She's our art teacher. Our art teachers, our music teacher, our world language teachers in kindergarten up through, actually in early learning up through 3rd grade, our kids take Chinese. In 4th grade, they switch to Spanish. And so what you're seeing here is Kelly, the art teacher, who is in the space. You'll notice that we have quite a bit of technology in the classroom. The technology that's there is meant to enhance the experience. It's also meant to allow our remote learners to connect to the classroom. We were able this year to be able to offer our parents both in person as well as remote option and to allow some flexibility there so that as parents felt more comfortable, their remote learners could certainly switch to being in person and vice versa. Parents could switch to remote if they felt that their child needed to do that. What you'll see in the classrooms is that our classrooms were built for space and movement. Our kindergartners, all of our kids, when they come in the morning, they have jobs that they do, they check in, they oftentimes in the morning have some sort of morning activity. They are still, however, working collaboratively, socially distanced, of course, but that collaborative learning, that learning with a peer has not gone away for our kids. In our kindergarten classrooms, a number of the spaces have a really cool breakout space. And this really allows our teachers to do a lot of small group activity, a lot of hands-on exploration. You'll see in this space, if I were to stop here, we have also a lot of outdoor spaces, but for us, if you remember me saying play is serious learning, we take play very, very seriously as a way to promote not only exploration and free thinking, but also as a way of engaging in problem solving. TCS is 2.6 acres in the heart of Midtown. We sit right opposite Piedmont Park, which is has been a huge blessing over the years, especially now. We have a number of different play spaces here on campus. Our kids, over the course of the day, spend a lot of time outdoors. Not only outdoors on our campus, but they also spend quite a bit of time outdoors over in Piedmont Park. We use Piedmont Park really as an extension of our campus, as an extension of our curriculum. So you'll see our kids over in the park, not only just for PE or for recess, but you would also see our kids over at Lake Claramere doing science explorations and experiments. And that starts at a very early age. We actually, after even our 3 and 4 year olds really get comfortable with being on campus and being in their space. Sometime around October, we start teaching them how, with their teachers, how to go over the park, what are the expectations of being over in the park, listening and responding and those things, and certainly playing. But you'll get a sense from here, we have, we're not only 2.6 acres, but we are also 11 buildings here on this campus. And so this just gives you another view into the play space. And what I will do is I will drop a link to this 360 in the chat in a little bit, so that if you wanted to explore this on your own, you'll see that there are some pictures that are embedded in these with also some more information around our curriculum and those types of pieces, which I really encourage families to explore. And then lastly, what you'll see, this is Callie. And so Callie is with our kindergartners. Callie is one of our librarians and one of our media specialists. She comes in during the week to not only engage in literacy, but really to help kids find that love and that joy for reading, which is an extension of what's already happening in kindergarten. And so with that, I'm going to stop the screen share, and I can talk forever and a day. I'm in the right profession, my husband tells me, but would love to certainly take any questions that families might have. And usually one question leads to another question, and we can move from there.
Please feel free to unmute yourself if you also have a question.
And I'm dropping the link there to the 360.
Hi, Nicole. My name is Larissa DuBose. I was curious in regards to the virtual options. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis for the children?
Really good question. Hi, Larissa. How are you? You know what? I will say that what we have tried to do is we have tried to keep a schedule for the remote learners that widely mirrors the in-person classroom. For our youngest kids, kindergarten, first and second, one of the things that we actually have done is hired additional teachers to support some of the learning needs of our remote learners, meaning that as kids, particularly of that age, are learning how to, not only learning how to read, but how to solidify those reading skills, they need more direct instruction in a way that kids who are older and who are remote don't. One of the things that we looked at is how many kids, so across the school, we are 2/3 in person, 1/3 of our kids are remote, and that the number of remote learners also differs by grade. So for example, in kindergarten, or I should say in our 4 and 5 classroom, we have one dedicated teacher to our remote learners because the about a third of the pre-K, if you will, started off as remote. So, so we have a dedicated teacher to those remote learners. Our kindergartners, less kids started off remotely. And so what we did was we have those remote learners tagged to a particular classroom. But in addition to that, we hired staff who works with those remote learners over the course of the week to really address and tackle the unique needs of a 5 and 6 year old, particularly around literacy. But in terms of their schedule, they very much are following a similar in-person schedule. So they are expected to be up in the morning. They will log on at a certain time to join the activities in the classroom, the morning meeting. Our teachers have taken a look to see where the cameras are so that our kids, our in-person kids and our remote learning kids are interacting. Our classroom teachers have buddied up remote learners with kids who are in person, so that social piece is not missing and not lagging. Our remote learners, for example, log in for lunch as a part of their day. They are logged in for their specials and for the direct teaching times. But we also wanted to empower parents during this time. We know that this screen and this screen learning is just not typical and usual for children. And so we very much also wanted to empower our parents and our caregivers who are at home with children to make determinations and decisions about what is best for their children. So parents are empowered to say to a teacher, hey, you know, my child is just not feeling like logging in right now. You know, can we have another time or another check-in, or is there something I can be doing at home? Our goal is has always been to work in partnership, especially now. So most of the time, like I said, our remote learners are following a schedule that's very similar to our in-person children, with the understanding that parents are really empowered to make some decisions for their child as they see what their child needs at home.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So I see that there's a question, how is the school handling virtual and in-person? Are classes live for those at home? The answer is yes, the classes are live for those at home. And actually our teachers, that not only is the class live, but when the kids go outside, for example, you will see that our teachers will bring home their, hold on there, I'm gonna mute my mic. There is an announcement coming through. It is rainy day recess here at the children's school. There you go. Our teachers will bring the iPads outside. We have our campus is really connected both inside and outside to allow for lots of different types of learning experiences. And so our teachers will bring the iPads outside with our kids who are remote learning so that they can just have some social time and some free time talking. So they'll, like I said, they'll pair kids up. And so they'll be able to just have those conversations, to be able to check in. At the same time, like I said, we don't want our kids constantly doing this. And so a lot of the day not only has synchronous time, which means live time, but there's asynchronous time too, to allow for our children to still be able to not only do the inquiry and play-based learning, but to be disconnected. I see a question from Kareem. How has the transition been with the new head of school? It has been really an amazing transition. Roz was very much behind the scenes. I would say starting in February, we announced that Roz Benjamin was the next head of school in December. And then I would say that Nishant, who was our former head of school, and Roz pretty quickly began connecting. There was a transition team that was set up very early on that included not only members of the Board of Trustees, but also included faculty and staff here at TCS. And then Roz and Nishant had a number of meetings every week, just so that there was knowledge sharing, if you will. And then certainly as COVID took effect, Roz sat in on all of those meetings, all of those meetings in terms of when we decided, for example, to close down campus, but to still keep the learning going. And then she was very much a part of the planning and a part of the meetings as we looked towards the process of reopening campus. We opened up the campus in limited fashion this summer for a very small summer camp. And then we also then rolled out our plans in terms of what in person would look like over the course of a series of communications to our families. I see a question here. What's the average tenure of the teaching staff? So the average tenure of a faculty member and a staff member here at TCS is 14 years. We are a school that has been really blessed to have people who have been here for, oh my gosh, I think the longest serving member right now has been here for about 41, 42 years. After her, there is actually Sherry Minoski, who is my right-hand woman in the admissions office. She is, I believe she's going on year 37 or year 38 in the admissions office. To members of our staff who are relatively new. We want our people, when they come, we are looking for them to stay. So we spend a lot of time on what we call people and culture, if you will. We want people who really understand what the school is about, who believe in the school, who want to be here. We very much also spend a lot of time in professional development and developing the skill sets of our faculty and our staff. This year, we're all doing a lot of webinars since we cannot travel for PD, but it is a school that very much puts a lot of time into the people here. People is what drives our community, and so that is a huge part of TCS. Are you currently still enrolling for this school year? I get this question a lot. The answer is yes and no. So it really depends on the grade level. Most of our grades are full, and we do have a weight pool for most of the grades. That being said, I have said to families, depending on the grade level, it is worth still applying. And the reason is because Atlanta is a transient city. There are families that move and relocate and things change. So even just recently for kindergarten, for example, we started the year off fully enrolled. And then in the last couple of weeks, I learned from two families that they're both moving. And so because we did have a weight pool, we were able to shift and call up a few families to say, we would love to be able to offer you a spot. So it really just depends on the grade level. Let's see, what is the COVID protocol, e.g. case detection, school shutdown policy, and all of that good stuff? We have a fabulous nurse on hand, and we've been working really closely not only with the CDC, but the Georgia Department of Health. We actually have our own dedicated person at the Georgia Department of Health who really helped us to work through all of the different protocols. One of the things that it was really important to share with our families was that we wanted to have a layered approach. So some of our protocols, for example, involve everyone is masked up here at the school. So everybody's expected to wear a mask, even our youngest kids. But we know that kids, for example, when they're outside, they might need a mask break. And so our teachers have definitely looked at how to create those opportunities so that our kids do get a break from wearing their mask all the time. But that is one of the protocols that we definitely have in place. Certainly 6 feet apart. All of our campus has essentially been rerouted to help wayfinding. We changed up our air system. We've installed handless water filtration systems and all that good stuff to be able to allow for to kids to fill up their water bottles but not have to touch the station, the water station. In the morning, our families must fill out a health screening form before they arrive. When they pull into carpool, when their carpool number is called, there's someone inside checking to make sure that that form not only has been filled out, but checking to see what the answers are to that form. And then when a child then gets out of the car, we're taking their temperature, for example, to see what their temperature is. Recently, when the weather got a little bit cooler and parents began turning on the heater in their car, we found that we had some kids who were suddenly getting out the car with elevated temperatures. And so one of the things that we did because of the protocol that we had in place is we asked the kids to stand off to the side. Our parents cannot pull off before we have confirmed that a child does not have an elevated temperature. We gave them a moment just to be out in the cooler air, took their temperature again, saw that their bodies had cooled down, and then off that they went to class. If a child does exhibit symptoms in the morning, for example, we ask parents to obviously not send their child and to keep them home, notify the school nurse, and the school nurse will walk them through the different protocols that we have into place. But all of our faculty and staff were tested right before school began. And actually our faculty and staff will go through another round of COVID testing actually in another 2 weeks. And so we're asking our faculty and staff and our families, everybody, to understand that this is an all hands on deck. Everybody is in it. We could have all the protocols in the world, and yet it really does take a village. It means that we're asking families to be very thoughtful and mindful around play dates, sleepovers, their activities. We are asking our parents to really, and our faculty and staff to really partner with us in this process, because one of the things we've said to our families is that should we have a case here at the school, it will not be because of what the school hasn't done. We have literally done everything that has been recommended. It will be because will have been exposure outside of school. And so it is important to us to not only have the protocols and to be able to implement the protocols, but then to say to our community, now it's time for everybody to do their part as well. Part of the protocols also calls to look at, should there be a positive case on campus? It doesn't necessarily mean that the entire campus shuts down. It does mean that a pod would, for example, shut down. You heard me mention that our specialist teachers, so art, music, PE, our language teachers, our librarian, our kids do not go out to those spaces anymore. Our teachers come into the pod spaces. That's to limit contact. And so what that means is that if there was a positive case on campus, that's why I said a pod might shut down until we know the status of an individual. If an individual has tested and tests negative, that pod would then be brought back to campus, for example. So that's some of some of the protocols we have in place. And actually, one of the things, Pia, that I can send you is we do have all of those plans that we shared with our community on our website, but I can send those directly so that parents can see exactly what we communicated to our community.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. What else? What else can I share? What other questions do people have?
I have a question about, can you tell me a little bit about the admission process and any differences due to COVID-19?
Yes, the admissions process. So typically, it starts with filling out the inquiry form. And so that is something that you can find at our website. And actually, what I will do right now is I will pull up that inquiry form and I will drop it into the chat here. Like many independent schools here in Atlanta, we use Ravenna to facilitate our process from start to finish for families. So I would encourage everyone to certainly fill out that inquiry form. And then what happens is that you will get usually a phone call from Sherry, and she will, her goal is to get you to sign up for one of our events. So we will have a series of events this year, like we've done in the past. They will all be virtual. So we have a few virtual coffees, which will actually look very similar to this year. And then we'll have 3 different virtual open houses throughout the year. So our first open house will take place in November. There'll be another one in December. There'll be one in January. And then the one that we will do in February is particularly focused and geared towards families that are looking at early learning and kindergarten. So the November, December, January ones are for all grades. And then that one in February is particularly devoted to our youngest learners. And the reason why we do that is that we know that families oftentimes take a little bit more time as you are looking at and seeing how your child develops, what their personality is, and those types of things. So we want to be able to not penalize families for taking that time and to still have an opportunity to learn more about TCS. We will, like I mentioned, we will have a few opportunities to visit campus on some select Saturdays. And those will be individual tours. So usually it'll be me and probably a member of our parent community who will lead a tour for a family. It'll be for parents only. So your little one cannot come to campus. But we do know that it is important for families to be able to walk onto campus, to step foot, to feel, if you will, and not just connect virtually. So for any families who are interested in doing that, you can sign up for that through Ravenna. Actually, you can sign up for all of these things through Ravenna that I've just mentioned. And then in terms of after that, we have an application deadline in early January. That is for families who are ready to apply and want to get that application in early. Our application will go live in Ravenna on October 1st. If you apply by, I believe it's January 8th, the application fee is $50. If you apply after January 8th, our application fee is $80. Our application deadline for kindergarten through 8th grade we have an early February deadline, which is right in line with many other schools. In terms of after that, we are actually, a number of the schools in the Atlanta Area Association are currently actually developing what it will look like to get a sense of who your child is. So more to come on that. And then we will notify families who are applying kindergarten through 8th grade of our decision in early April. We're members of AAAIS. We do have an early notification date for families who are applying to our early learning program and want to apply early to our early learning program. Our early learning program is for children ages 3, 4, and 5. Right until right before kindergarten, if you will. So families can apply for our early learning program by December 18th, and they can have a decision by February 1st. Okay, so let's see. I see a question here. How do you decide when to relax measures or go full virtual in the event of a breakout? Okay, so in the event, so one of the things that we certainly look at is we take our guidance from what is happening certainly here in Atlanta and certainly in the state of Georgia. So in March, for example, we decided really almost at the same time as other independent schools to close campus because there was a government stay-at-home order. And so we closed campus on March 13th, I believe, was our last official day here on campus. And we stayed closed really until through the end of school, and that was because we were looking at what the government stay-at-home order that had been issued at that point. If you recall, there was a lag, if you will, between Atlanta and Georgia. And so we were, as a school and as a group of schools, we were all paying attention to what was happening with Atlanta, but also what's happening in Georgia. We do pay attention to what the cases look like. So we know that Georgia is certainly trending down, but we also look at what's happening in Atlanta as well, because Atlanta could look one way, but Georgia could look another way. And so we do, but we take our guidance in terms of what we're going to do from a number of different sources. The CDC, the Georgia Department of Health, like I said, we definitely are paying attention to a lot of different sources and sites. We also work really closely with epidemiologists and those types of individuals as well. Do you offer after-school programs and summer camps? Yes. So we do have an active and robust, what we call extended day program here on campus. That is open to our early learners up through 8th grade. And those include a number of different options and offerings, including creative and athletic options. In years past, we opened up our extended day program, our after school program, to the community, meaning if your child was at Morningside for kindergarten, for example, or if they were at Spark or Mary Lynn or Westside Charter, we would allow for our kids from the community to be here for after school. COVID has changed that. In our need and our desire to make sure that we still have pods and that we have smaller numbers with those pods, we're not offering our after school program this year to the extended community, but we're very much looking forward to when we can do that again. And then summer camp, it is very active here. We have a 6 to 7 week summer camp program. It usually starts in early June and goes right through the end of July. Is there any test or observation required as part of the application process? So typically observation, yes. Kids would have come in for a Saturday morning visit, and they would have been in a group of about 10 kids. So about the size of a pod now, working with teachers. We take a developmental approach to what kindergarten, for example, readiness looks like. And so we're looking at everything from language and speech to early signs of reading readiness. So a child can not necessarily know all of their ABCs, but they can know all they can have really strong phonetic awareness. That phonetic awareness that oftentimes is developed through rhyming, for example, is a stronger indicator of reading readiness than a child knowing their ABCs by sight, for example. So we're looking at those elements of reading readiness. We look at, like I said, the social emotional, how do they respond to adults and those types of pieces. So that's normally what would have happened in a typical year here at TCS. Because we are committed, like most schools, to a virtual process this year with admissions, that Saturday morning visit likely will not happen. And so the schools are looking at other ways in which we can get a sense of those pieces. And we're definitely going to rely really heavily on feedback from if a child is at a preschool, for example. We value our preschool partners. We've had so many families come from Suzuki over the years. It is a preschool that we know incredibly well. And so we're going to very much rely also on the feedback from our preschool partners. We are not members of in terms of the schools that use what's called the JATP, the JTAP. So we do not require that as part of our admissions process. Any other questions? Pia, do you have any other questions?
I'm sorry if you covered this, but for lunch, is that included in tuition for the kindergarten younger students?
It is not included in tuition. It's an extra or it's an add-on. We use Atlanta Lunch Co. for our lunch program here. What that means is that parents can create an account with Atlanta Lunch Co. You can see their full menu of offerings. It was important to us to partner with an organization that thinks about healthy eating and healthy cooking and in terms of what is best for kids. They create some really awesome tasting meals because you don't see them in the garbage much from kids. But parents can order a meal that's prepared fresh that morning, and then Atlanta Lunch Co. brings it here and it gets delivered to the classroom. Parents can use Atlanta Lunch Co. really ad hoc. So you could use it all the time. You could use it once a week. Parents sometimes, you know how we're all very busy. So, parents have forgotten sometimes to send a lunch, and you can log on to Atlanta Lunch Co. as late as I believe 8:15 or 8:30 and get a lunch sent here to campus. But you also have parents who will prepare lunch every day, who love to prepare lunches. I'm one of those crazy people who I get a thrill out of lunch containers. I really love them. I love how creative they've become with lunch containers. So I don't mind creating lunches for my children. I haven't gone as far as what you see on Pinterest in terms of the cookie cutters and things like that, but I do love lunch containers. And you can certainly send your child with a lunch every day. We do ask here that you we are a nut aware campus. We are not a nut free campus. And what that means is that because we don't have a cafeteria, that means that our lunches, our kids eat lunch either in their classrooms or they eat outside. You'll see a lot of outside eating these days. And we do have children in a pod who have a nut allergy, that pod becomes nut free. And we ask our parents to please not send any products or items that have nuts in them.
I'm sorry if you covered this as well. Did you guys have to reduce your class sizes? And has that also impacted your enrollment in just terms of having new students?
We actually proactively did reduce our class size and our overall. So we used to have a max grade level, if you will, of 48 students. So starting in kindergarten, we would grow our pre-K. So our pre-K usually was about 32 kids, max of about 36. Some of our pre-K kids, for example, would go to their public school, but we also knew that we were going to be growing that grade. So usually in kindergarten, we would have about an average of 21 to 22 new students coming into kindergarten for a max grade level of about 48. So usually our kindergarten classrooms had between 22 and 24 kids in a classroom with 2 teachers. With COVID and looking at all of the CDC guidelines, we knew that there was no way, when we looked at the spaces, but also when we thought about what was going to be safe and safest for our kids, that we were going to do that. So we intentionally capped our classrooms to 36. So we definitely limited enrollment on our end proactively. And we will keep that number probably looking ahead going forward.
Thank you.
Any plans to expand a high school? I get this question all the time. The answer is not right now. I cannot say that the school has taken it off the table, but back in 2015, we did quite an extensive strategic planning process. One of the pieces and elements of that process was to decide whether or not to add 7th and 8th. We were a school that ended at 6th grade at that point, which was really a throwback to the junior high school model. before middle schools became a thing. And so the strategic planning group at that point looked at whether we should add 7th and 8th grade. We actually looked at, did we want to add a high school at that point? And the group very quickly ruled out adding a high school. And the reason is twofold. Number one, as a school that is about children and childhood and preserving childhood for children, high schoolers they're different. They have a different set of needs. And we wanted to maintain our focus on what developmental psychologists really consider the years of childhood, which is really up until about the age of about 14, if you will. After the age of 14, they're on their way to becoming adults. And so that period of childhood is seen as shifting. They are certainly always our children as parents, but childhood looks different. Actually, there were 3 reasons. The second reason is that when we examined and looked at schools to which our kids go to, so after the children's school, our kids go to really a wide variety of schools. You pretty much name the independent K-12 school here in Atlanta, and you will find kids from the children's school. But you'll also now find our kids also choosing to go public for high school. And that's because a lot of our families are really of the mind that they want to invest early and invest now in their child's education. And then if they have a really viable high school option, they want to take and use that option. But one of the things that we looked at was, what does leadership look like for a child who is 5, 6, 7, or 13 in a K-8 versus what does that leadership look like? What does their voice look like when they're in a K-12? And what we found was that K-12s oftentimes reserve a lot of those leadership opportunities for their high school students. And what we had already seen at the children's school was that our kids have real voice when they're 10 and 11 years old, when they're 5 years old. Our spirit shop got started by our 3rd graders a number of years ago. And so we wanted to be able to maintain and develop that voice and that individuality and that independence, and not reserve opportunities for kids just because they were on the older end. We really wanted to maintain that throughout. And then thirdly, we are here in Midtown on 2.6 acres. For us to be able to add a high school, we would have needed to have purchased another campus. And one of the things that we really value is having children age 3 through 8th grade on one campus. There is a Big Buddy, Little Buddy program that's quite robust. We think that there's a lot of value in our younger kids, seeing our older kids as role models, but also our older children, our middle grade children, not being exposed and trying to reach for what feels older to them. So our 12, 13, and 14-year-olds feel really appropriately their age. They don't feel like they are older than what they need to be at that point in time. And so we wanted to not have to purchase another campus. Real estate in Midtown has gotten quite expensive. And so we really valued the one campus experience. Any other questions? You are very welcome.
I see one in the chat box from Morley. Where do most kids go on to high school?
So when we ended at 6th grade, I would say 98% of our kids went to other private schools. And those schools included really schools that were on opposite ends, if you will, of the pedagogical spectrum. So a number of our kids would go to schools like Paideia and Galloway, but you'd also see a fair number of kids going to schools like Westminster or Woodward. You would also see our kids going to Atlanta International because while Atlanta International is fully immersed, has a fully immersion program in terms of their language for elementary school, their model shifts in middle school and high school. So you don't have to have been there and have been fully immersed in terms of the language piece. We also saw a number of our kids going to Atlanta Girls School. Once we added 7th and 8th grade, our kids continued to go to all of the independent schools. So PACE, for example, and Lovett, and certainly the schools that I just mentioned, as well as other schools like the New School of Atlanta, for example, which is a project-based learning high school for grades 9 through 12. Academe of the Oak, which is a Waldorf high school in Decatur, got added. Then the realm of schools suddenly opened up for our kids. And then also, like I said, and as I mentioned, the public high schools really became an option. One of the things that we heard from our families loud and clear is that they were really trying to avoid what felt like a large impersonal middle school experience. So many of our parents were oftentimes choosing private school through default, as opposed to really choosing private school for middle school because of something more deeply rooted in terms of their thought process. And so once we added 8th grade, that really afforded families, parents, but also students. Like I mentioned, that student voice is super important. So our students play a very active role in their high school counseling process. We have an individual here that is dedicated to high school counseling, who works very closely with our families on that front, who works really closely with our students from start to finish, preparation for visiting, SSAT preparedness and all of those things, all the way through the application process to decision making. And so our kids get supported through that and really looking at their options. So the public high schools became a real valued option for our families. So we've now seen a number of our kids going to their local high school, which has included Grady, Lakeside High School. This year in 8th grade, we have kids that, we have a few kids that are really into performing arts. So they are looking at the DeKalb School for Performing Arts, as well as one who's looking at Pebblebrook High School in Cobb County. They have a performing arts program that's highly regarded. So really our kids start here at the school. They spend 11 years here, many of them. And when it's time for them to leave, they're ready to go to a lot of different types of places. They don't have to just go to that next school that feels like TCS. They really thrive in a variety of places. We're trying to build flexible, adaptable learners. We're trying to build kids who know how to think, who know how to engage adults, who know how to ask questions, who have really strong executive function skills. Those are the things that we're really looking at. We've talked with Georgia Tech, which is right down the street, to ask, what are they looking for when they think about kids coming for college? What are the things that they see? And they often talk about looking for kids that have the same qualities that we are trying to instill here. And so we feel that we're really on the right track, not just preparing kids for high school, but really preparing kids for life beyond high school. Do we have data on how kids do? We're actually in the process we're going to be sending out an alumni survey very soon to our kids. And so we look forward to sharing a lot of that information down the road. We certainly actually on our website we actually have an infographic about where our kids have gone to both high school and to college. What we have actually is a lot of anecdotal data. So we actually call out and call over to a lot of the schools that our kids go to check in on them, to find out how they're doing. We want to know, the child that we send them from us, that it was the child that we knew and beyond. We oftentimes will have our parents who, parents of our alums, they'll write back and share about their grades, for example, how they're doing. Are they doing leadership opportunities and those types of things? Kids out of our first 8th grade class landed on varsity teams. in their first year as a ninth grader. That's awesome for us to hear, because it meant that that we prepared them for that particular sport, which happened to have been volleyball, to play competitively. Like I
I was
said,
gonna say, I think we have 5 more minutes, so we could probably take one more question. But I did add my email along with Pia's email in the chat box. So any parents, if you have any more questions, please email me and Pia so we can talk to Nicole and get you guys all situated. But if anyone had one more question, this is the time to ask it.
and like I said, I will send you all a number of pieces that I referenced, and always happy to talk more. And so I'll send you both an email, which will include our contact information and I think just a lot of pieces that families will enjoy having.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. You've been such a pleasure. This has been great. I'm sure I'm going to get flooded with emails along with Pia, just trying to connect with you. So so much for this.
I'm so happy. I always love participating with Suzuki. I certainly miss the in-person fair.
Same.
I literally would stalk you all, like, when is it going to be? I want it on my calendar. Got to make sure we're there, because we've had amazing families from Suzuki join us over the years. And so thank you for always asking us to be a part, and certainly look forward to connecting more. And if anybody does have questions, like I said, I will share my contact information. We would love to talk with families more.
Awesome. Thank you. And hopefully we get to see you next year or sooner.
Fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you so much.